It'll always be freedom. It'll always be freedom.
Hello everyone, welcome to Conversations in Anarchy. I'm your host for today, Tom, and I've got two very lovely people with me. We're being treated, not one guest, but two. We're going to be talking all things inner transformation, freedom from the heart, how we manifest the things we want to in the world through various modalities, techniques, mindsets, all of those things in a very holistic manner. And I couldn't have asked for two better guests who are going to be sharing some of their insights in the non-conformist series at the end of this month. So once you've done listening to this wonderful conversation, which I'm very much looking forward to, you can head over to Anarchapulco.com and get all the details there for May the 31st. So we've got Christof with us, we've got Samantha with us, and I'm going to start us off. I asked if this was a good idea just before we hit record, and Sam and Christof were in agreement. So Samantha, you do a lot with breathwork as one of the modalities that you work with, and I invited you to give us a little exercise just to ground us in this conversation today. And so when you're ready, you can let us know what you'd like us to do. And for everyone listening along, they can join in too.
Yep. So today I'm going to help you calm down with something called the square breath. Now, you may or may not have heard of this. It's very well known, and actually the military use it if they're about to go into a stressful situation. But before we start, I just want to just get us grounded, really ready for the session. So I'm just going to invite you both to close your eyes and then just observe the breath and observe the body. Just come into a relaxed, natural breathing rhythm. And just notice if there are any tensions in the body. Just let them go with every out breath. As you're there with your feet on the ground, just feel yourself grounding into the earth. Imagine roots coming through the bottom of your feet, going deep into the earth. So now when you're ready, just open your eyes. Okay, so the square breath, you can use this anytime if you want to calm down your nervous system, or if you're about to go on stage or have an interview or something. And what you do, it's called the square breath because you breathe in for a count, usually of 4, and then you hold for 4, and then you breathe out for 4, and you hold for 4. So it's very simple. So it's in through the nose for 4, hold for 4, and I do out through the mouth for 4, hold for 4, and that's holding your breath. So we can do this just for a couple of minutes, and it's probably best to close your eyes. So I'll guide the first couple of rounds. So in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Out through the mouth, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. Hold. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. Hold. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. Hold. Let's just keep going and just count internally just for another minute or so. Okay, so finish the one that you're doing. And there we have it. How was that for you both?
Very relaxing. Thank you so much for the opportunity to drop in.
Exactly, in a calm way.
Yeah, I love being able to drop in with a breath exercise in all sorts of things I'm doing, often with a box breath, actually, especially if I've been running around trying to tick off little bits and pieces before I dive into something bigger, just to land me in a space. And I really appreciate that there. And something that actually jumped out in the very first set of breaths before we started the box breaths was the idea of the roots going down into the earth. I was catching up on some of Christof's videos earlier today in preparation, and in one of his exercises, he had that imagery of roots of light going into the ground, and so there was a synergy in the imagery for me there. It's for me, it's indicative of a detachment of our true selves, and I'd like to put a question to both of you to open up a conversation today, which is, what is holding people back? You got to start this stuff. You want to jump in first?
I was going to offer the mic to Sam. Sam, do you want to go first? Then I'll follow up.
Yeah, so I believe what is holding people back, well, it can be many things, but usually it's the mind and the contractions in the mind. And this can come from, family, religion, culture, however they've been raised. It can be from trauma, and their beliefs. And so, yeah, I do believe it's the mind and this matrix we're in, and people's limitations and fear, and that's all mind-based instead of heart-based.
Cool. Well, I'd just like to add some layers into that. Of course, we're a multidimensional being, and we have our emotional, physical body, emotional body, mental body, and spiritual body. And all of them in combination, are working to create one's reality. So with the question, what's holding one back? Of course, the simple answer is oneself. It's you holding yourself back. And ultimately, the real pathway is into the pathway of the internal, changing across yourself through the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual layers. Now, the main thing, I think, as an anchor point is frequency. You are creating a reality based upon a vibrational set point. And most people are operating within a zone of a vibrational set point. They might jump up and jump down a little bit, but generally, they're at a vibrational set point, and their reality is a reflection of that frequency that they are holding. Now, mainly, there are anchors that create the vibrational set point to be where it is rather than higher, because as you go higher in frequency, your timeline shifts. And it's not time in a linear sense, it's your station of consciousness that begins to expand, unpack, and hold a higher potential for a higher quality timeline, people, event, circumstance, mission. And so really the game of life is a most simply stated, is one of raising one's vibrational set point and expanding one's consciousness to hold a higher station. And the secret of doing that is finding the resonating anchors. These anchors are kind of like these emotional traumas and locks and suppressions that are locked into our tissues or our body or our fascia or our emotions. And essentially, there's certainly the mind aspect, because based around that, there's a core wound. The core wound is the anchor. Now, based around the core wound, around the outside of it, this is the pain that has not yet been expressed and allowed to leave the body. So that trapped pain is the wound. Now, that wound has then got quite good protection around it. First up, there's layers of fear. The fear act because we don't like to come into contact with it. We've been avoiding it our whole life. And then wrapped around that fear are our energetic defenses. These energetic defenses act as sentinel guardians to the wound, knocking away, energy that's trying to come into it. And here is the let's call it the challenge people have, is that wound is simultaneously, pushing energy away that wants to come into it, but simultaneously attracting it. Right, because we live in an environment where the law of vibration exists, where that which is like is attracted upon itself. So while that wound is existing within you, you keep attracting the people that are very irritating to you. Typically within your mother-father archetype, the unhealed expressions of the masculine, the unhealed expressions of the feminine. It shows up in your relationships. It shows up in your partner. It shows up at work. It shows up in the people who irritate you. They are not here to irritate you. They're here to teach you. They're here to teach you the woundings that still exist. So these energetic defenses are simultaneously pushing it away, as well as and then the wound keeps attracting them towards you. And then built upon around those energetic defenses is the mental construct of the belief. Then the belief is that I'm not safe with men, or I'm not safe with women, or whatever the constellational belief is. And that belief ends up becoming the antennae for attracting the very situation that you're trying to avoid. And that belief system and architecture starts to draw in the experiences in the quantum field towards you in a repeat pattern. That's why the patterns keep getting repeated time and time again. And the secret to the whole thing is the wound. And if you can get to that wound, that's where the magic happens, because if you pull it, the entire constellation of the thoughts, the feelings, underneath that, the belief, underneath that, the unmet need or the pain or the trauma that created the wound, the entire thing gets pulled when you can express the trapped emotion and trapped electrical energy which sits in the wound. And that full expression of all that out through a release, and breath work is fantastic for releasing these little pockets. You are able to then, completely change, your vibrational set point, because one of the core anchors has been removed, keeping your vibration low. And that is the secret to changing your reality, is to find the anchors, find the wounds and the pockets that are keeping your vibrational low. And then when you pull one, the entire constellation changes and you end up at a new vibrational set point, creating thus a new reality.
Beautiful explanation.
Yeah, really wonderful. And you hit on something for me there in the attraction of all those things that trigger that trauma over and over again. For me, it's a reflection of our body saying, "This, I'm going to keep bringing these things to you until you realize that this is what's going to happen, that this is what's happening to you, so you can go in and heal. And if you don't get it the first time, I'll keep triggering you more and more and more." And it's all
exactly. And when God really wants you to learn it, typically God will put it in your family, so you can't escape it.
Yeah, it's especially with it when it's in the family and there's the ancestral component to it. There's a weight that can come with that as well. But it's part of what we're here to do, what we're part to take on, and with the ancestral line, because there's our personal stuff, but then as you start growing, you end up taking responsibility of cleaning the ancestral line. And if you can imagine, there's just generations of pain and trauma in all of us, that has been held. And this is like an electrical current. It's almost like you've got this line that's plugged into the mains,
and your ancestral current and ancestral DNA and your bloodline and the energetics is that, plugging into the mains. And that current comes through that ancestral lineage. Like if you think of it like a holographic reality with each of your ancestors, a hologram passing trauma down to each other. And what I love about this work is that it only takes one truly committed person, and you can become a genetic liberator, which means you can liberate your entire genetic line of that trauma or the pain or the recurring pattern that sits within the ancestral field when you're truly committed, so you don't have to pass it on to your children. And even if your children are adults, you can still do it as an older person and clear it for them still. So this is the beauty and the potential and the power of this work.
Never too late then, is it?
It's never too late.
Never too late. And it's
I like that word, genetic liberator. I've never heard of that. It's
yeah, that's one who completely changes the destiny path of their genes, of their genetic line by, Typically, there's always a key anchor in the genetic line. Sometimes it's karmic, like someone has broken natural law to such a degree where there's a big karmic load on the ancestors that then have to carry that karmic burden. And so sometimes if you can find these little keys, you can completely create a massive leap in the vibrational set point of your entire genetic line.
Black sheep as well, isn't it? The black sheep of the family that does the work, the one that's been blamed for everything.
Typically, that's how it goes. Everyone thinks you're crazy until they realize you're not.
That's what I find. The idea of the genetic liberator, though, it's a far more empowering reframing for me, because that's saying, wow, look, we have the power and I would say the privilege to be able to transmute all of that pain that's gone for so many generations and to bring freedom out of all of that. There's something really powerful for me which contextualizes it as it's not just for the generations that's coming, it's part of it as well, but for all those before us. So it kind of goes, it exists beyond time, that freedom, and I think connects to something higher as a result there. Sam, go on, Christof.
Sorry, I was just going to add before you give Sam a question, was that, this type of work, as Sam, you'll know this from your work as breath work, it's not necessary for the faint-hearted, because something like breath work opens up the emotion that you have to express it. And what happens in something like breath work, which is so a potent tool, is that as you go and open a pocket, as the oxygen comes in and raises the frequency around the tissues to allow that little pocket to open, you get to re-experience the inconvenient feelings that you didn't get to experience at the time. And so it takes courage. And courage is not something that you can be given. It's something you bestow upon yourself. And courage isn't working in the absence of fear. Courage is action in the face of fear. And you have to move through your own fear to get to these little nugget pockets. So courage is kind of your fuel to get there. And as you can kind of breathe through it, you will experience what that you weren't allowed to experience as a child. And if you think about your parents, how many times did you hear them say, "Oh, come on, be quiet, stop crying," or, didn't allow the anger to get expressed. There's anger in there as a child and you weren't allowed to express it. It got kind of clammed in there. And then you've got this electrical charge busting around your system. And then in very inconvenient times, it basically just bursts out to the ones you love the most. And so the courage is having to go into the pocket that, say, something like breathwork opens up, and then, you experience the trauma as if it's happened in the moment. And I'm sure, Sam, you've got many stories you could share about breathwork and people popping open and experiencing that trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. I think doing any kind of healing or taking responsibility for that yourself takes a lot of courage. And I think people think in breath work they're going to actually have to go through the event and again, but what I do with people is that I nurture them, I gain their trust, and then what I do is a mixture of angelic Reiki, so I get the help of the angels coming through, which is also really supportive, and I guide them through the breath very gently to begin with. And then I also do NLP timeline therapy. So I take them above the event and then just before the event and do the work there. And it actually energetically changes it for them. So it's almost like they're going back in time to do the healing. But yeah, I've absolutely seen some, incredible healings, and also some, in different, when I was doing my training, some people in all sorts of kind of different states. But ultimately it brings relief, and it does help people. And I've had incredible experiences myself. I went through my own birth again in the session. So yeah, I've had really amazing, uplifting, and also quite tricky experiences with it, where I actually couldn't stay awake. I kept getting an unconscious pattern coming up, and that was from when I had pethidine in my birth. I had a very unconscious birth, and I was drugged basically. And I managed to breathe through that, and it was like, it took me a couple of years. And when I breathed through, it was like a light bulb went off in me, and it's like I woke up, and then I could read at night without falling asleep. So that's how bad it was. So it's given me, amazing.
Thank you for sharing. It's a beautiful story.
Do you find that the people you work with, that they're surprised about how powerful some of these objectively simple techniques can be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're more surprised at, what happens afterwards and the transformation. So, for example, one of my clients, he came to me and he said, right, I haven't celebrated a birthday since I was 7. Okay, he did a testimonial for me on this, so it's okay to share. So when he was 7, his mum organised a birthday for 40 kids at Burger King, and no one showed up. And he was absolutely devastated. But we found out, because I always find out someone's, we call it a personal lie, because it's your most negative thought about yourself. And this is usually formed between the age of birth and 6 years old, when we're in an open state and we just absorb what people tell us. So he had a personal lie, this negative belief, that he was unwanted or no one liked him. And so when we delved into this, I realized, he said, I don't actually remember giving the invitations out. So because he had that belief, he'd actually created no one turning up because he didn't give the invitations out. And then he proved to himself, oh, well, no one likes me. So then he went down this sort of hole of like not being liked and even more. And anyway, so we worked on that in the session. He phoned me the next day, said, you're never going to guess what. My sister, who I haven't spoken to for a couple of years, phoned me and said, we're going to have to sort this birthday thing out. And he said, I couldn't believe it. He said, she just phoned me out the blue. And then he ended up spending the weekend with her and the family. He bought them all presents. And he said it was a really healing time. So, energetically, that's just too much of a coincidence, I think. So, yeah, it was amazing for him.
It's an interesting framing. I've heard someone else who also works with Reiki actually contextualize that as she calls it a flop, a failure of life operating system. What is that narrative, that trauma that's central, that other ones begin to build around as well, to say, what is the I am unlovable, a failure, whatever the narrative is there. Christof, do you find that there are, in the kind of work that you do when you work with people, that there are some of those ingrained beliefs that are more central and core than others? And what does that process of working with that look like for you?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, of course, in order to change is you need to change your identity, and that means having a belief about who you are. Often when people are looking to evolve themselves, they're often looking to, you get to a certain level and you've worked through egoic deficiencies. These are little imprints in your lower energy centers or your egoic pieces, and you're moving towards more soul needs. And often people are looking at, what is it that I'm here to do? But that's not really the question. The question is, who am I here to be? And it's in the being that the doing happens naturally. So the big shifts are really the ones linked to the identity, the self-worth, who I am in the world. And ultimately, you can There's a few different techniques you can do to shift subconscious beliefs. However, in my experience, I've noticed that they come back. And the reason why they come back is because of the wound that hasn't been cleared. So if you think of it like as a frequency, if you change the belief, which is more sort of mid-level, subconscious, the wound is unconscious, right? And so if you take a look at the conscious mind that gives way to the subconscious, that gives way to the unconscious, it's really like a simple metaphor might be, think of a computer. The desktop is like the conscious mind. Whatever's in your conscious mind immediately comes up on the desktop. The subconscious mind is like the RAM, the random access memory. And this is kind of where things get moved from the hard drive into the random access memory. You can instantly interface with it instantly. And this is kind of like our daily operations. And that's where many of the beliefs get held, right? But then they come from the hard drive, and hard drives where all the data gets stored, and they emerge from the hard drive. So sometimes changing beliefs without identifying the wound underneath it, the belief will come back. So the deepest layer is to drop all the way down to the hard drive and start to reprogram yourself from the level of the hard drive of the unconscious mind, and that again is the most complete transformation, is healing the, say, not necessarily a core belief, but I might call it a core wound, because the core belief is wrapped around the core wound. That is the trapped energy and inconvenient feelings and emotion and an electrical charge that's still in the system. So the electrical charge basically is the unreleased, unexpressed pain that is still there. The belief gets formulated from that. So if you work on the belief, it's great, but it'll come back because the frequency broadcast is still there. You got to drop down to the wound, the core wound. And if you get the core wound, that is when the more full, complete identity transformation will arise, and you can end up, moving up by releasing one of the anchors so the hot air balloon can sail higher.
Wonderful way of putting it. Do you think it's, in terms of where we are at the moment, it feels like, I know I've had so many wounds that in my work with the beautiful practitioners and mentors that I've been blessed to work with, I'm just surprised at the number of layers that I keep finding, keep going and going and going.
It's
never ending.
Never ending.
Has it always been this bad, or is there?
So let me explain, in my experience, how evolution works for someone from the very start of when you first start to decide to do the work to then what happens towards much further down the track. And, in my own experience, I've uncovered just yesterday a real deep core one that I was able to release, and so, I'm sort of, have been doing this work for a long time and still finding these deep pockets that are still in my childhood. That's allowed me to now, from, it's early days, but drop more into my body and presence of now, rather than projecting forward into the future. Because as a childhood, I uncovered that I created a concept that around I have to prove my worth to earn love. So I was always striving for excellence and creating myself in the future, and which took me out of the now. And which my wife was always giving me loving feedback. You need to be more present, but it was hard for me to be present when I had a condition that I needed to prove myself in excellence in order to receive love. So these little things you can kind of find. Now, what I've personally noticed after doing this work for a lot of years with a lot of people is, in the beginning it's quite slow. And you do these work and you find these things, but actually your physical life doesn't seem to change that much. You're just kind of very bumpy because you're in personal process. You're processing all the time. Because once your consciousness decides it wants to evolve, the higher self will start sending you lots of opportunities to work through these pockets of pain and trauma and wounding and solving things. You start solving it. But in the beginning, it's kind of like you feel like you're going flat lining. You're not really going up. But the secret to it is to recognize you're actually in the dark night of the soul. And that's a concept in spirituality which really refers to the fact that you've identified that your current life is not in alignment with your vision of what the soul has in store for you. And so what's happened is that your conditioning from your family and your ancestors and all of that has created your life to be here. But at some point, the soul is waking up and remembering and going, oh, I remember, right? And this is not my life. My life is over here, right? And that gap between where your life currently is and where your life wants to be is known as the dark night of the soul. The soul has memory of what it's here, who it's here to be, and the mission, but your life is back here, and you have to go through the heaviness of doing the deconditioning work in order to get to the promised land of what your soul is, ideally coded for. So that dark night of the soul is, in the beginning, it's just like wading through this dark tunnel, and it's bumpy, and you get knocked around, have to get back up again, and you just need the courage to navigate the gap, I'm calling it. And the gap is where you are compared to where you know what you're destined for. And what I've noticed is that at some point, you hit an inflection. And it seems impossible back here, but you just keep going and keep going and keep going. And the secret to this is you just don't give up, right? And if you give up, that's when it's going to fall away. But what's happening right now on the planet is that there is a much faster frequency that is coming into the planet, and these faster wavelengths are making it easier than ever before to move through these pockets. And so the faster wavelengths come into contact with the slower wavelengths, and through a law known as harmonic induction, it raises it up. And that's happening en masse to everyone. People who are, open to evolve are using these faster wavelengths of current to surf themselves up to higher levels. People who are ignoring it and putting their head in the sand are having a lot of forced awareness. And as we come into this point of mass planetary transformation, which is happening in the next 2, 3, 4 years, as massive reorganization is happening to the energetic architecture on the planet and the people who have got their head in the sand are going to think, oh, hell's breaking loose and the woods turn to shit. Whereas the people who are evolving are starting to come faster to their promised land, right? So what I've noticed is that there will come an inflection where all of a sudden, all that work you've done, all of a sudden you start to go on this hockey stick up, and things go quicker, things go easier, things go more faster and smoother, and the acceleration begins to happen. It's an exponential algorithm. And so what that exponential algorithm does in personal transformation is that it's slow going in the beginning, and you don't see a lot of results or feedback, and there'll come a point where suddenly the exponential algorithm starts to kick off, and you algorithmically start to go up faster and faster with seemingly less effort. You get more and more results. And so all you need to know is the pattern of what happens. And so I've given you the pattern. So just know that you can't get disheartened back here and don't think it's working, right? But you don't actually see the physical results in your life until later down the line, where you keep unwinding, because at the start it's so dense and so tight, it takes a little bit of time to open that up, to allow that spaciousness to arise, to allow the unwinding of your DNA and the unwinding of your frequency and consciousness, to hold a spaciousness, to allow the quantum field to interface with it in a way that starts to illuminate and lift you off. And you just have to have faith and trust. And ultimately, once you've got faith, right, and belief, ultimately it will give way at some point to knowing, right? And the difference between believing and knowing is certainty. But the only way you can get from believing to knowing and have that certainty inside of you is to make your own unique soul journey through the dark night of the soul. And that gives you the direct experience required to be able to anchor in certainty and knowing inside of you that I'm safe in the unknown, that Mother, Father, God has me at every step, and I can sit with certainty, follow the guidance of my heart. And if I do that, every step will be met by Creator, and I'll be provided for. And in the beginning, you don't have that. You're being asked to jump into the unknown, leave your job or whatever is going on, and step into the unknown. But you've just got to have the faith that if I follow my heart, things will work out very well for me. And you have to undo the conditioning that laces you with fear and uncertainty and doubt into the direction of your heart. And it doesn't make sense in the moment. It only makes sense when you turn around and look at your life and go, oh my God, everything has just coordinated and everything now makes sense. And you only get that on the other side of the gap. So faith and trust. And then you'll get knowing, and then you'll move through, and things speed up. Things speed up the more you do, the deeper you go.
Does that ring true for you, Sam, in the work that you do?
So in the work that I do, so the So I've been practicing breathwork since 2009, and I've been on that journey, training for over 10 years, and then hosting groups, and now I do one-to-ones. And I also follow the 8 limbs of yoga, so the Hindu path, and I believe in continuous upward transformation. So the breathwork, the rebirthing breathwork, I use for clients who have who come to me who are, new to all of this transformation. They've got some traumas, they're stuck, they might have depression. So normally I'll do 10 sessions for them. Sometimes they might need more, but I'll also support them on the journey. And then I also run with my partner Greg. We run courses on steps 1 and 2 of the path. So that's the yamas and niyamas, which are 10 moral lessons. And they help the world because morally the world is going down. So as we go down, we lose our freedom. So we need to all morally get on this path of transformation. And so once people have done the breath work with me, I lead them to the school group that we have called Heart Wisdom Collective, and then to do the courses so that they continually transform. And then I give them tools as well, so they've got a daily practice, because that's also important, to have a daily practice to keep yourself uplifted. As Christof said, it's all about this, continuity, because if you stop, then you can go back to old habits and old ways of being. You've got to keep your vibration high and keep yourself, focusing on what you want. Once they've cleared out these subconscious negative beliefs and patterns, and then keep going on that path. So,
evolution is a continuous journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when people are enlightened, they keep going.
There's always another layer to uncover.
It's always another layer.
Just when you thought you were there. That's what about, I think about people who might say, oh, but it's, it should be me that's static. It's the rest of the world that's changing. The rest of the world that's the problem. I'm not the one who needs to change. It's the rest of the world that has the problem. What would you say to someone who's got that frame on things?
Well, maybe I'll bring it back into a more relatable way, is in relationships, right? It's not me that needs to change, it's my partner, right? I mean, so often in relationships, there is projections of blame, right? Where, it's my partner that's just triggering me and irritating me. What I've directly experienced and noticed myself, and in the beginning, my own relationship with my wife is a great, testing ground for all of this. In the beginning, it's like we were dating our parents, right? Dating each other's parents with the same conditions and the programs. And through time, we both, have evolved and changed a lot, and we've transcended that. But in the beginning, often there can be a lot of blame on the other person for the other person making you feel in a certain way. But essentially, the relationship is just simply a mirror for showing you what's unhealed on the inside. And so one of the most important things is to own our projections and to bring it back to us. What is this person showing me or teaching me? What is that? Because ultimately, when you heal the wound, what that person is showing you doesn't resonate in you anymore, and you don't get triggered. So when you get irritated, triggered, and upset, it's never the other. It's always you. And so what happens is that it's called a resonator. You've got something in you as a resonator that is clicking onto this energy that attracts it, that kicks off the pocket of the pain and starts these defenses and sophisticated systems of projection that make you avoid feeling the pain. And it's just convenient to blame it on your partner. So the real work of transformation is taking personal responsibility for your irritations and upsets and then using, this is the path of Tantra. Tantra isn't, funky sexual positions. It's basically harmonious, relating, to use your partner as the mirror to ascend towards, higher consciousness. Yoga is the solo path, right? So there's two paths. There's yoga, solo towards ascension, towards source, and Tantra with a partner towards ascension. In Tantra, your partner is that irritating trigger, is the medicine you need for self-reflection. And then in that self-reflection, you can start to unwind, okay, these thoughts and feelings are inconvenient. What's underneath the thoughts and feelings? What belief must I have in order for me to think this when she's saying this to me? And underneath the belief, what is the unmet need that has been highlighted here, or the trauma that's being highlighted? And what might the wounding be for me to think this about what she's reflecting to me or he's reflecting to me? And ultimately, what I love about this work is we often, we do lots of live events and drop-ins and experiences. And one of the things I do love is when people come, and often, women will say, oh, if only my husband would change this, and then I'd be happy. And then she hits a core wound in herself and clears it, and she goes back and her husband's completely different. And so ultimately, I believe it only takes one committed person to completely change the relationship. The reason for that is that you've got, for example, let's call it resentment. And I'm sure my wife won't mind me sharing this story. But in the early days of our relationship, her father was, quite aggressive and, alcoholic. And she ended up with a lot of resentment towards the masculine that would then be projected on me. And that resentment would then come out in perception and aggression and all these other pieces of things. When she healed the resentment from her father, that means her signal changed and she wasn't projecting the frustration and anger out on me. My energy field could soften and I could receive her more. And I wasn't so defensive around her because I didn't need to be defensive because her signal changed. So when you do this work properly, what happens is that your signal changes and your partner responds differently to the new signal. And this is the power of, doing the deeper work on oneself, is that your signal changes and therefore your partner responds differently. And you'll realize that all along, it was never them, it was always me.
Yeah, it certainly rings true for some of the conversations that me and my partner have had, where we both had elements of not wanting to say things to each other for the fear of the disappointment that it arouses, and me noticing the moment I feel a trigger of her saying she feels like she wants to say something but she's struggling to say it, the triggering, I can, because I've done some work, I can take a pause and instantly say with me, oh, hang on, it's triggering me because I have a piece of that and she's here doing this to show me that that's a part of my journey and a part of my wound that I can then investigate as a result. And
beautiful.
Yeah,
it's very exciting, isn't it? When you and your partner are both into evolving, it becomes a very deepening of the love and the relationship, because the partner gets to see the parts of you that typically others don't see, right? So it's the beautiful container, and then when you work on something and you clear it, they witness you change, and it's such a beautiful deepening of love and bond when you work together like that on that tantric path.
Yeah, it's always best to do the work together if you can, rather than one person ascending and the other one staying stuck. It's not great, ideally. So.
Yeah, I find it interesting that something that at least helps me in those moments is a pause and a breath and a moment for grounding in that, to try and find some sense of alignment, I guess, to say, okay, what's actually going on here, rather than going out from the automatic pattern, the behavior, the reaction, to try and listen into to see, okay, what's actually going on. I find that's where change happens for me. That's where I make change in the world because I change the pattern, I change what I'm doing in this one interaction that then has a ripple in everything I do. That's freedom, because that's gives me the agency to show up in every area of my life as my most conscious self, to do what I came here to do and to share that with other people. That's for me why this level of freedom is important. We've got so many other speakers at the Nonconformist talking about all different practical subsets of that, of what that might look like in different environments. But for me, this is what underpins all of that and allows us to show up in all of those different fields with our best selves.
Totally.
Something else that came to mind for me, Sam, you mentioned, you brought up earlier with the collective, and remind me of the name exactly.
Heart Wisdom Collective.
Heart Wisdom Collective. Yeah, and that idea of wisdom being in the heart is a really powerful image for me, and as a way of moving out of the chatter and the narratives that happen in the head that may not be accurate. Mm-hmm. Are you able to speak a little bit to that and why that name came up for the collective?
Yeah, so we're very much into living through the heart instead of being in the mind, and always reaching for the highest thought, the highest resolution. And the name came along because of that, and also the wisdom of the heart. So, we are all we are all connected through the heart. And when we open our spiritual heart, that is where all the wisdom is. The brain's supposed to be used like a computer, not to make decisions. And that's, unfortunately, the issues in the world. We're living, from the mind, the majority are, and they're not actually living through their spiritual hearts and realizing that we're all connected and we need to love each other, raise our vibration. And we have a logo underneath it, so it's saying awareness, action, transformation. So it's about helping people to have more awareness, to open themselves up, to live with more morals and love each other and be kind to each other. So it's awareness, then action, because we've got to take action, to transform, and then following the steps, you're guaranteed the transformation. So we have courses where they learn each yama and niyama over 12 weeks. There's an intro and extra, and then they have specific music which has the resonance of the lesson that week. And it's really beautiful to see people's transformations and really, to become more heart-centered in community. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What does that idea mean for you, Christof? Of heart wisdom or being heart-centered?
Sure. So there's an innate intelligence in the heart. People think intelligence is in the mind, but the heart intelligence is the knowing. And what happens for people is that they skip the heart intelligence and try to justify and understand from the mind. The heart doesn't need to understand, it knows. And if you have the courage to follow the wisdom of the heart will take you directly to the center point of your purpose, because the heart is the guidance system in life. And so the knowing of the heart wells up as a knowing. And then I think when people are in the early stages, but that couldn't possibly work out. How am I going to get that to happen? The mind is trying to understand, how do I get to the destination the heart is always guiding us to? And the challenge that people have when they operate from the mind is that the mind can't work it out, because it's a linear operating system trying to work out the steps and sequences. But when you live in coherence, right, which is, love is the secret key to coherence. Coherence then puts you in the, in the one song, the universe, because love is the broadcast signal of the one song. Then all you need to do is to find your unique note of the heart's expression to join the symphony of the one song by your own unique expression, by following the knowing the heart leads you on, and to discount the mind's need for how. And once you've got sort of trust and knowing locked in that, hey, even if I don't know how, all I need to know is the next right step. And if I can listen to my heart's intelligence, my heart will give me the next right step. I don't need to know all the steps. I just need to know the direction. And I need to know the next right one. So when you come to these little crucial moments of life and the intersections, it's in the stillness of the heart's intelligence that you are given the next right step. And that's all you can take in life. And as long as you keep following it, the heart will lead you there like a straight arrow. But it's Mother, Father, God that will synchronize how that happens, not you. Your role is to simply hold the frequency of coherence, because when you enter coherence, that is when the synchronicity starts to happen in your life, because you're into the non-linear motion of Mother, Father, God's divine plan. It happens non-linear, and you can take these quantum leaps, and synchronicity pops and speaks around you, and then you can use that as feedback, knowing that I'm incoherently aligned with my soul signature that is guiding me perfectly every step of the way, if only I can listen to the heart's intelligence of the next right step. So the difference really is operating life through the wisdom of the heart, trusting its next right step, letting go of the how that the mind is always asking you to drive to. And if you can use the mind's intelligence, when needed, so it's like a car, you've got a Ferrari in the garage, but you don't have it revved up high all the time, right? You just get it going when you need it. And the rest of the time, you're in stillness. Doesn't need to be whirring the mind. But the only way you can get the mind unwhirring is to go back to the original conversation, is to clear the pockets of wound, the core wounds, because it's the core wounds that drive the mental plane with what I call a lot of mental and energetic admin. The admin is all the compensations that you're running. These compensations create a lot of energetic kind of effort to keep suppressed that energy and to hold the compensation in place. That then, when you release that, your essence begins to well up from the liberation of the core wound, and the administration required to hold that wound down eliminates, and you're left really with a lot more energy for creation. And that creative energy wells up within you because you're no longer using that energy to keep the wound down. So all of it really is this beautiful invitation for us all to come into the heart, live from there, trust the next step, and let go. And allow Mother, Father, God to provide you with the synchronicities that will take your life forward.
Amazing.
And it's a lovely explanation to it. And I was introduced to it through Jung's memoir, where he talks about his time with the Native American tribes who have the exact same perception of it. Heart is where the wisdom is. They even say the heart is where they think, because for them, that is the place where the decision is made and the trust comes from. Sam, I know you were on a silent retreat recently. Has that reminded you at all of that relationship between, I guess, the mind and the heart, and of the power of being centered in the heart?
Yeah, absolutely. And my journey has been, it was very scary, thinking I've got to open my heart, and thinking that, that means that, I'll be even more wounded, but actually it's the opposite. So even though the journey of opening the heart is lifelong, I feel that I've had some incredible transformations there, and especially in silent retreats, really where it was very apparent to me that I wasn't in my heart. The first one I did, I noticed the inner voice was really critical, and actually, I wouldn't speak to my best friend like that, put it that way. So I knew I had to go deeper, and I had to really start loving myself. And so I'm still on that journey to go even deeper. And but I'm absolutely more compassionate than I used to be. And now I can actually take things like if I have a thought that's not so good, I'll take it into the heart, and I can actually, open up to more compassion that way. So, and I couldn't do that 10 years ago. So, but I'm still on the journey. So, and the silence helps you to magnify that. So.
Beautiful. It's always a journey, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, yeah, silent retreat is something I've not had experience with, and is on the when the time is right, I'm sure I will find myself there. And
yeah, absolutely. Most people say, when we talk about silent retreats, they say, I could never do that. Most people aren't silent for even a day. But actually, we do 4-day silent retreats. It's an introduction to the silence, and it came about because I was attending silent retreats, and then I spoke to a friend who, unfortunately, she ended up taking her own life because she went on a Vipassana, and she'd had a number of relationships that ended, and then she went on this silent retreat, and she hadn't studied the yamas and niyamas. Like, for example, the first one is ahimsa, non-violence, or kindness to self. She went on the silent retreat and she came out thinking, I'm a bad person, I'm horrible, which was not true. And also, but she had this belief, but it was actually an abuse to herself. And then she ended up taking her life during COVID, and very sad. And I then decided, it would be great to do 4-day silent retreats to really help people understand the reason for silence and helping them to silence the mind, get into the heart. We do spiritual practice such as asanas and conscious relaxation and walks in nature. So it's really beautiful 4-day introduction, and with fantastic food. So yeah, if you ever fancy it, just let me know.
I'll bear in mind, I can see it as being a good vehicle for really moving out of the human doing and back into the human being, to strip away the noise of, how I see it, the narratives that we carry with us wherever we go, and to come back to fall back into alignment through that modality. And something that is on my mind to experience. And Christof, you're nodding along and smiling, and
The mastery of stillness is in motion, right? I think Bruce Lee once eloquently said, the stillness is not the true stillness. It's the stillness in motion do the universal laws manifest. The stillness and movement do the universal laws manifest. I love that. These silent retreats and these extended periods of time where you get to sit in the stillness gives you a window of what life can be like when you do the deeper work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think many people, they're scared of sometimes even, sitting still. People keep themselves so busy because they don't want to sit still, because they think that they'll experience, the trauma or something, their own thoughts. So there is a lot of fear around actually sitting still, and people are, they have busy lives, and it's true, people are just such doing. They're on this hamster wheel. They never sit still. And it is the best thing for people these days to actually take time to have a retreat, even once a year. I think everyone should do it. It's amazing, and people have incredible breakthroughs and insights. So yeah, and obviously we need to relax. Many people have high cortisol, and they don't know how to relax, consciously. Like, watching a movie is not really relaxing, but doing conscious relaxation in a guided way, that's, teaching the body how to properly relax while you're actually consciously awake, but relaxing the body. So
I can definitely own a piece of that from my past of wanting to stay on the hamster wheel and keep busy to avoid doing that work from the fear of what I might find there. The shift for me came in realizing that it's going within to that wound that is the medicine that means I don't have to be so busy and wearing myself out and feeling ill and whatever it is all the time, because I'm going into where that's all stemming from. And I'm curious, Sam, if you've got any insights or ideas on how you encourage people to keep with that process, and to continue on that journey when it might be difficult to begin with.
So, yeah, first of all, I would say, find someone that you feel comfortable with to guide you, because, helping yourself, if you've got, traumas or you don't really know where to start, it can be really difficult. Everyone can go online these days, but it's important to find the right person for you, so that you can be guided by someone who's had that experience, who knows, what they're doing and can really, really help you to, to work through those traumas, and then to help you to ascend and to keep going on that upward transformation and the journey to the heart.
Christof, any ideas from you?
How can people, slow down to life? Yes. Well, one of the interesting things about, let's call the body, is that it becomes a storage site for emotions that are heavy and are often, traumatic based, and it layers into the fascia, it layers into the organs, and it creates stress webs. And these stress webs are energetically like dark webs of energy that link into the bones and the organs, and it locks everything down. And this locking, the phase locking of the energetic, creates this process of the brain's, hypothalamus pituitary gland axis. The energy feeds into that and creates the stress response in the body, which is the release of adrenaline and cortisol. So quite often there's a hormonal factor to this that drives it. And when you release the energetics of the stress webs, and you start to, do the work that processes the emotions out of the organs. For example, liver holds anger, kidneys hold fear, lungs and heart hold grief. These sites, when you start to release those, the energetics start to hold away. Now, if there's one tip that I could give people of a habit that they could, let go of in their physical life, that will change everything for the speed of which they're moving through life. And you're not going to like it, but I can honestly say it's hugely effective, is the world's most popular drug, and that's caffeine. And what happens is if you're a coffee drinker, you don't notice it if you're drinking coffee regularly, but it's like putting, hot kind of kerosene onto the car engine, and basically it sets up this kind of field of running a little bit hot. And you start to run a little bit because you're giving the adrenal system a bit of a boost, like a jump start in the morning or wherever you take it. It takes you out. If there's one thing that is taking you out of coherence quicker, it's caffeine, because it peps up that hypothalamus adrenal gland axis that starts to get the release of the cortisol and adrenaline in the body, and starts to pep you up a little bit more. Now, in the beginning, people think, I couldn't never get about coffee, I couldn't start my day without one, or whatever it is. My invitation is that if you're serious around coming into coherence, which is the language of the universe, see if you can eliminate coffee for 1 month and just see what happens as an experiment. And, you're a tea drinker, Tom. I drink tea. And listen, I still drink coffee from time to time. I love the taste. And, I've got a rule now. During the week, if I go to the local coffee shop, I have decaffeinated coffee because I still like the taste, and I have to deal with the dehydration of that side of it, but I don't get the caffeine. And once a week in the weekends, I don't have caffeine when I work. It's like a fast way for me to burn out. So once a week, I feel I can handle it. Any more than that, I can't. It takes me out of coherence. So the invitation is that if you want to come slowing down into the coherence of life of being, then contemplate giving an experiment of giving up caffeine for 30 days, and then come back and take a coffee in 30 days and see what it does to you. You'll be surprised of how much of an effect it has.
And the key there for me that comes out is that curiosity. it's the observance to say, okay, what's happening to me in these different states? How am I different in each of them? And really tuning in, that's what
Totally
makes the difference. Yeah. So there's some giving us some little insights there. We'll start with you, Sam. What else can we expect from you for your contribution to the Nonconformist series, for anyone who's listening in and has heard those tips and wants to find out more?
Yeah, so I'm going to be helping people to understand that the way that they control their breath can have a huge impact on their life. And also teaching people about how to clear anger and how to have freedom from their negative thoughts, because thought is creative. So all of that and more. So.
Beautiful.
And Christof, from you.
Well, it's interesting because they've got me on a topic that I spoke at the Anarchapulco conference. So it's more, let's call it a meta picture, but with a invitation of how you can move through this process, and it's called "How to Escape the Earth's Consciousness Prison." So I'll be giving a sharing on how our planet has become a consciousness prison for soul recycling, and how you can move through a pathway of embodied ascension to escape the consciousness prison traps and be truly free, both while you're here living on Earth, but to liberate your soul so you don't have to go get caught up into these reincarnational cycles. So it's kind of like a more of a wider viewpoint, but we'll be coming in with some direct tips on how to evolve and ascend, exactly what steps and sequences you need to do to hold more of your higher consciousness while deeply embodied.
I'm looking forward to that.
Good stuff. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the different overlaps and the connections that will come from having all the different speakers that we've got for the Nonconformist series. It's going to be a good event. So you can head over to anarchapulco.com for the details on that. We'll put Sam and Christof's links and everything to their work as well in the notes. It's bringing us to a close. Sam, you opened us up. Christof, do you have a little exercise or something we can do to close the container?
Oh yeah, let's do that. So let's just take we'll use the old box breath so everyone knows it. We'll just do 3 cycles of that, and then I'll take you somewhere. So taking a moment, ground in, feeling your energy connected into the earth. And breathing in for 4. Holding. And breathing out. This time, imagine your breath coming from the center of the earth up into your heart. Breathing in. And as you breathe out, allow that energy and breath to expand out from your heart outwards. One more. Breathing in from the earth to the heart, holding, and breathing out and expand. And into the cycle of your own breath. And coming with your consciousness into the center of your heart. And tuning in to your life at its highest potential. Getting a sense and a feeling of what that is, who you are, and who you must become to hold that vision. Bring that feeling of your life at the highest level into your cellular intelligence. Understanding that when you're following the heart, it will guide you into your contribution for the unfoldment of the divine plan here on Earth, for this planetary ascension into higher wavelengths, higher dimensions, and your unique part in that picture. Knowing that when you follow the intelligence of your heart, live in coherence, you will be exactly where you need to be at the right time for the right next step and sequence of the beauty of unfolding your golden path, your life in full alignment with your purpose, knowing that it's a journey, not a destination, and you're here to hold the gates up open for others by being a living example of what life can be like, free of trauma and pain, in the intelligence of the heart, living with love. Y esta unter esa. Well done.
Thank you.
What an amazing way to close. Sam, Christof, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Lovely to meet you, Sam, and all the best, everyone, on your journeys. All my love.
And to you.
Bye-bye.